Hello. Hi. Hi, Nadine.
Hey, how are you?
Welcome, Nadine.
I'm here. A little frazzled, but I'm here.
Aren't we all? Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Askable Adults Live, the show where we talk all about community, sex ed, and we welcome new team members.
Yes.
But
But first,
before anything else, we have to do our usual acknowledgments and recognitions, and that is that what Black Lives
Black
Matter.
Lives Matter.
Yeah, today and always. And of course, we definitely need to make mention, a special mention, because if everyone is up to date for certain things that are happening in Texas, certain laws that are being passed, they tend to impact more minorities and people that have many needs, and based on several studies, these types of laws tend to affect more to Black and African American folks, especially women.
Yes.
In an article from Time, an analysis from board certified obstetrician and gynecologist estimates that with this new law in effect, the state could see an increase in maternal mortality of up to 15% overall, and up to 33% for Black women next year, because there is definitely a link between maternal mortality and abortion rates. So it's definitely.
And we know that maternal mortality is already disproportionately impacting women of color.
Exactly. So not only Black women, although they are very heavily impacted, but also impact other folks or other people of color, and of course indigenous people as well. So it's very important for us to learn more, to be more alert. And in any case that we want to take action, we can also reach out to our state senators or representatives, all those people that make laws, because they are the ones who can actually make a change.
And we desire to hopefully have laws that are equitable here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, right?
Exactly. And as many of you know, there's a lot of work to be done. I don't know why it just popped into my head, but just I think it was because I was talking about this in another conversation. But for example, remember that, for example, in the city of Reading is the only place where, for example, LGBTQ plus folks have
Protected.
Are protected. There are other boroughs and other areas that are trying to pass laws and ordinances like that, but still, at least here in Berks, we are the only ones. So there's a lot of things happening. So hopefully folks will take action and advocate for more rights, and instead of less rights, that can move us as a society forward.
Yes.
So, Black Lives Matter today and
Black
always.
Lives Matter. Always. And who are we?
Who are we? So, hi everyone. As hopefully you may know, my name is Johnathan Rodriguez, and I'm the Youth and Health Resource Center Coordinator for Berks Teens Matters. The Health Resource Center Coordinator is currently open our office at the Reading High School. It's located in the health room 138, door number 5. Just ask for Johnathan, and they will gladly point you to my door. And with me.
With me is Nadine, the community liaison for Berks Teens Matter, and my pronouns are they and their.
My pronouns are he, him. I'm sorry.
I like it when the shoe is on the other foot once in a
while. If folks remember, this tend to happen like the other way around, and I'm just like, oh, well, let's start the conversation.
Eager to move forward.
Yeah, but that's a very important not distinction, a very important thing to say, because that opens more conversations, and of course it allows us to tell everyone that we understand why pronouns are important, and it opens many doors. So today, in our life, we want to provide this space for our newest, brand new
Team
team
member?
member. So give it up to our new project manager to speak about you to us and to you in your houses or cars or wherever you are, about her background and maybe what the future holds for BTM. So give it up for Heather
Heather.
Ulrich.
There we go. Welcome, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Heather. How are
Hello.
you?
I'm doing well. Sound check. Everyone can hear me okay? No tech difficulties?
No technical difficulties.
Awesome. We're off
All
to a good
good
start
in
then.
color.
Yes.
So, Heather, we met a few weeks ago. How has it been getting to know Berks Teens Matters?
Okay, well, first off, my pronouns are she and her.
I'm sorry. I'm the worst.
And secondly, overwhelming in the best way possible. It's, my idea of coming in. I had a foundational idea based on my background, but just the knowledge that has been brought to me already, it just gives me such a different look. So yes, overwhelming in the best way possible, lots to learn, and hopefully from my past experiences, lots also to bring to the table.
That sounds like a good mix.
Yeah, I hope.
So I'm curious, Heather, because I haven't really asked you this question yet, but when and how and did you first hear about Berks Teens Matter, and what were your impressions about Berks Teens Matter before you came through the door here?
Yeah, that was a good stumper question. And I sat here thinking about it and I'm like, when was my first exposure? And I feel like I can pinpoint it to when I was previously working for the County of Berks at Children and Youth Services. You get a lot of, services and organizations, things that can be helpful to the clients that you're serving, kind of thrown at you while you're also juggling, a caseload and just trying to keep kids safe and everything that goes along with that. So I do remember in a very brief capacity, hearing about it whenever I was initially doing some intake cases. And then I heard about it again whenever I transitioned to my next role within the county as a victim advocate for the DA's office. And I had actually learned about it through learning about Coe County Wellness Services, because it was part of my job as the outreach and education coordinator to learn about really, in a more in-depth way than I was able to at Children and Youth Services. So I got the opportunity to come here and learn about Coe County Wellness Services and the services that were available, and a little bit also about Berks Teens Matter. So I will say ballpark, and everything blends together now in this very weird time that we're in. Like 3 years ago, I want to say was more like my official kind of learning about it, which is kind of embarrassing because you've been around doing great things for much longer than that. So I'm sorry.
No, that's not at all embarrassing. Don't be embarrassed by that, shall I say. Yeah. There's many good people out there in the community who have yet to hear about us. So you're way ahead of the game.
We will change that.
Yeah, exactly. That just means that we need to put more efforts in being more in the community. Usually, some folks have said, "Oh, I've seen y'all walking down the street." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not only walking on the street. We need to be in other areas of the community."
Right.
Yeah, they've seen the T-shirt or the sweatshirt or whatever.
Absolutely. That does, just the bright colors and everything. I totally remember that does stick out so well to me, that you say that. That's funny. So yes.
Making notes.
Yes.
Making notes. So, what was it about the work of BTM that drew you into the position of project manager? Because I kind of think that, some people may feel a little bit intimidated or maybe overwhelmed because of the topics that we cover here at Berks Teens Matter. So, what was it that drew you to it?
That's a wonderful question, and I think probably my background, previously within the county, again, working with some underserved populations, working with some at-risk kiddos, that really exposed me to the world of advocacy and just how important that is. So whenever I was, doing my job searching and everything, and this came up, and I was reading the job description, and I'm like, oh yeah, yes. Yes, I'm into that. So just, the long and short of it is I'm an advocate at heart. Like there's always something that needs to be championed, that needs to be brought to light. And for better or worse, I always am like the moth drawn to the lamp where I'm like, yes, I need to be part of that. So just the work that you do, not only reducing teen pregnancy, which is super important. Obviously, we are experiencing higher teen pregnancy within the city of Reading and the community of Berks County as a whole. And you're doing a fantastic job at educating and reducing that. But then it's also just the broader piece of what is comprehensive sexual health and what should education maybe look like and how can we do better in that area. And I think, knowledge is definitely power, especially whenever it comes to our youth. And whereas sometimes maybe we want to shy away from tough conversations with them, we really are doing them and ultimately us a disservice, because I will tell you, if I don't have a conversation with my son about just how anatomy works and what can happen if you get someone pregnant, and then I am perhaps a young grandma helping to raise a child, well, I know that's going to add another layer of stress to my life. So I think just keeping our kids safe, we owe them the responsibility of having these uncomfortable conversations, and you don't have to do it, by yourself or in a vacuum either. So I think just overall, it's very much up my alley as far as where, my soul is as a professional and a person.
I like that you said that it doesn't have to be, that you don't have to be alone. There's a lot of resources. There's the Askable adults.
Facebook Live.
I mean, well, put it there. But it makes me also think about external resources. And actually, this past weekend, I was talking to a friend who wants to start the conversations with their kids, and their kids are pretty young still. So they started with the names of the body parts, stuff like that, but they want to open up a little bit the conversation because their family is a little bit different from the rest of the families. So they want to start the conversations because they want to empower their kids with the knowledge of, this is my family and my family is different from yours, but that doesn't mean that my family is less than yours. So
Right.
that's a bit different. And someone that an organization that or a resources that I brought up was sex positive families.
I was just gonna run over there and grab a book and say, "Hey, there's a book here."
I actually mentioned that book. So for folks that follow us, Sex Positive Families is an amazing resource that we follow a lot. And Nadine brought the book, and it's just amazing. They offer workshops. They offer, almost a hand to, like, hey, you don't have to do this alone. We can all be in the room, but it's almost like we always say in pretty much all our live, or the Facebook lives and streamings that we do, is not one conversation. It's a lot of conversations, no matter their length. Really, it can be a short conversation, it can be a long conversation, as long as we have them. So one thing is to do a workshop and okay, we're learning about this, but once the workshop ends, it's on you to keep that conversation going.
Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that, oh my God, I have to do it alone.
No, and you know what? Just from my own personal experience as a mom of a 6-year-old, we have had these conversations since he was old enough to talk. So, like around 18 months, we're very big on identifying appropriate body parts. And that reason is really a safety reason, coming from my background of doing child abuse investigations. In order for a kiddo to, in the event that something awful would happen, in order for them to be able to disclose that, it really is so important for them to know all of their appropriate body parts. But then also just having conversations about healthy boundaries and asking permission, something else big that we did in our house, asking permission or letting my son know if and when I needed to have access to his private areas, and asking permission of that as well. I need to check something out. Is that okay with you? And we've modeled that since day one. And at first, it was foreign to me. It wasn't how I was brought up, and it was a bit uncomfortable. But now we're so far into it that it's just, like talking about the day, and that's what we do. And he's very comfortable to come to me with something that might not be comfortable otherwise, or something that he, whatever he has going on. We have that open dialogue and that open discussion going, so that I'm his safe place. I'm a safe grown up, but there are others that you can talk to as well. So that's just great. I think starting that conversation early is so helpful in so many ways.
Yeah. And I really appreciate, because I think what you pointed out in terms of safety and prevention of abuses is a big motivator for a lot of people, or can be a big motivator for a lot of people to have those conversations. But at the same time, and as you said, most of us, most of the time, are going to be a little uncomfortable with that because nobody had those kinds of conversations with us when we were growing up. So we might start out being a little uncomfortable. But if we're motivated for that safety thing, the other thing that happens, I think, is that when you start those conversations, the young people don't know to be uncomfortable with those
Right.
conversations. It's just what they're learning. And you're also taking away that sort of shame and stigma, because I'm going to teach you, like, this is your eyes, this is your nose, this is whatever. And then there's this part of your body that we're not going to talk about. And then we're going to go to your feet and your toes. So if you can talk about all those things as you are working your way into being comfortable, you're also raising a young person who's going to be naturally comfortable, and hopefully they can infect you with that comfort as the conversations continue, because they're going to be comfortable with the subject matter.
And kids are good at doing that as well. So yes, you're absolutely, you're right on the money with that. And also, just to my point, to clarify, I did label them as private parts, not that there's any shame or stigma there, but in that we address that these are your own parts, not to be shared with other people. He is 6, and we're in that, very much that realm. And if anyone tries to have access to these parts, that's something that you want to let a safe grown up know. So that's why we just label it that, but not in a shame, or stigma way.
It's more based on boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, everyone should ask before, taking your toys or taking something that is yours. Well, your body is yours, and you have ownership of your own body. So I think that's a really great perspective to see it, because again, it's not based in shame, but based on autonomy.
Yes.
So I think
good word.
I think there's such a good. Okay. Yes. So, Heather, prior to joining Team BTM, and you already mentioned a little bit, you work at Children and Youth for a while, and then later at the District Attorney's Office.
Mhm.
Of course, that gives you an insight to issues that we might not be too familiar with. So, how do you see your background informing your work at BTM? I think you've already made your case, but still.
There may be more.
Well, I think and I certainly don't want to steal the show. I'm supposed to be learning from you two right now, but
no. We're learning all about Heather.
Exactly.
So I guess what maybe on a systemic level, working in the child welfare system and then in the criminal justice system, it's easier for me to see areas that perhaps could use some revision, some that are outdated, some that aren't really beneficial to the families that they're supposed to be serving, or to the workers within those systems. And it's really hard, at least prior to going into it, to put a finger on like, well, what really is this bigger issue? How can you verbalize that in, a 15-minute conversation with someone? So it shined a light on some of the issues that individuals going through the child welfare or through the criminal justice system might be up against. And oftentimes, as from your work that you're aware of, it's there are more of the odds stacked against people who may be from underserved communities, who may be from communities that there are some stigmas still unfortunately attached around them. So people someone perhaps like me, I'm a white female who experiences something that I have to navigate through the child welfare system. I'm going to have a totally different experience than someone who might be living in, not even knowing where their next meal is going to come from, or they might be a person of color or someone who identifies as part of the LGBTQ community. So just seeing where some of those issues are within both of those systems, I think that those were really good experiences for me in building upon what I'm going to learn here. But I think it's also what I've learned, or what I was fortunate enough to learn, especially as a caseworker. So you definitely, your heart goes out to the children and the kids. And, I'm very, I'm an advocate, especially for children and kids and teens and youth in general. But nothing is ever as black and white as it may seem. So while I can be very upset or just enraged about the systems that might have failed this child, or the parents who didn't show up in the ways that they could, I can also, on the other side of the coin, see that sometimes these parents were dealt just not a really great card. And that's not to say that they also aren't feeling maybe a bunch of negative feelings or shame or guilt or fear about them also having to navigate this system. So it's rarely ever just like, well, you're definitively a terrible person and you're definitively the good person. Like, there's so much gray area. And I think that is beneficial to me in being able to take a step back from what myself might view, what my opinions are, and allow me to see things from more of an objective standpoint so that I can best service people in the way that they need to be served. So that's my hope anyways.
It's complex, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
So I'm curious to know, I know you've only been here, I was thinking it was only 2 weeks, but I know now that it's been 3 weeks.
3
whole
weeks.
Here. Yeah. Which is not all that long. No. But still, in those 3 weeks, I imagine you're already finding there's ways in which the work here is different from the work that you've done in the past, perhaps, even though it certainly can be informed and enriched by what you've done in the past. What so far, and we're not going to hold you to this forever, but now, so far, in these few weeks, what challenges and opportunities do you see here?
Opportunities, I see unlimited. I see so many different directions that you two have both already been putting such great ideas in my ears as far as how BTM could be built up and grown to better serve the community as a whole. Berks County is a very large community. There's a lot of rural area that goes along with that too. And, is there capacity for us to move beyond where we're at? I think absolutely. But on the flip side of that, are there challenges and hurdles that go along with that? certainly, yes, because sometimes, talking about some of the issues that we are talking about, it can automatically turn people off. They can shut down. They don't want to have these discussions. And there are, a lot of people who want to dig their heels in onto whatever they firmly believe in. And I certainly do respect that. But at the same time, we need to also be open to change and to the fact that things are not exactly as they were 20, 30, 40 years ago, and that change is constant. So I think just the challenge is going, or has always been, probably getting people to see that what you're trying to do isn't to put negative thoughts into teens' minds so that they are going out on a whim and just doing all of these impulsive things. Absolutely not. It's the flip side of empowering teens to know about their bodies, to make the right, smart, healthy, and safe decisions for themselves, while also respecting and understanding that the family unit is super important, and that should really be guiding the discussions. So to be able to get to that point, to have those conversations, there's some roadblocks up there. That's so far what I've come to understand.
That's pretty good so far, I would say. What do you think, Johnathan?
I think we encountered that at every tabling event.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, not you. Okay, we understand it. Maybe you're not ready. But there might be other parents that I think sometimes they're just looking for a little push to do it. Just tell me how to start and I'll do it. I just don't I don't dare. It's just like, okay, let's talk.
Right.
So sometimes it's just something that we've been saying also for a while, is that, Askable adults, we are not only Askable adults for teens or the youth in our lives, but sometimes also for other
Other
adults.
adults.
Right.
I like that.
So because
Yeah.
sometimes, like you said, we are not raised talking about this. We are not raised with the necessary tools to put ourselves in a uncomfortable conversation, and know that everything will be okay because we're just talking. So finding an adult that is ready to have those conversations, and that they don't necessarily shy away from also talking to another peer, I think it can also be very beneficial, because we empower each other, we support each other. So I think we need more Askable adults, also for adults and not only for teens,
I agree.
because uh, that's how we spread
Yeah.
the word.
Right.
Yeah. I appreciate you talking about that in the way that you just did, Johnathan, because I think when we started out, we were kind of working on that idea of adults talking with adults. And we kind of stepped away from that at a certain point because we didn't find ourselves making very much progress. We didn't find ourselves engaging very well with many adults, but there could be some real value in circling back to that.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
I mean, the fact that our initiative is Berks Teens
I know.
but that doesn't mean that the adults in their lives, because everyone, we need someone that have grown, that have gone by these experiences, that has already, other perspectives in life, that can provide guidance. But again, guidance is not a mandate. It's not like how you're supposed to. It's just, this is what worked for me, but I understand that it may not work for you. I don't understand maybe the why, but maybe you can explain me. So we're just having a bunch of conversations. And since were you gonna say something, Heather?
No, I think that's just that. Yeah, absolutely. In getting adults on board, and teens as well, I think part of it is meeting them where they're at, which is often coming to the table with lots of different reservations for a lot of different reasons. And that doesn't mean that their ideas are necessarily going to change from the conversations that they have with us, but at least if we have the opportunity to present them some information, if they're willing to hear it, that's a step in the right direction. So yeah, I mirror that.
Yeah.
So, and since we're talking about the conversations, etc., when we talk about starting the conversations, a common response for many parents is that their children are not old enough yet. Uh, Based upon your background and your experience, how young is too young, and how old is old enough?
With respect to certain family systems, how they interact maybe within a faith-based community, or perhaps they have more conservative views than I do. So I respect and I understand that. For me personally, and what I have found professionally to be most empowering and helpful to kids, is to start the conversations young. And like I had mentioned before, how I do with my son, we're not starting talking about anything like super in depth and hard to digest, but we're talking about appropriate anatomical parts. We're talking about boundaries and consent, and then as they are getting older, it's easier. It's almost an easier job for you because you're not having to start then
Mm.
with that, all of that, and then also teaching about whatever else comes at a later age. So to start younger really does help you. It benefits you because they already have this knowledge of consent. They already have this knowledge of boundaries, and what their body parts are, and you can so build on that. And this is what your body parts do, and there's no shame around that. And I want to talk to you about secrets, and if there's any grown-ups that maybe want you to keep a secret, or even someone who isn't a grown-up, like an older person, that's not something that is ever safe for you. So we want to keep that conversation going with our kids. And it's really, especially in my experience working with at-risk youth, it is so helpful when they're able to navigate their own bodies and they feel safe in reporting to an adult that they trust what's going on with their body, or perhaps what has happened with another individual, an exchange. I think it's never too late to start. It's not like you're like, oh, lost cause, my kid's 16 now. No, I think it's always important to have the conversation if you haven't yet. But I think for people who might be watching who have younger kiddos, it's not too early to start modeling good body positive behaviors, and modeling things around consent. And this is your body, and nobody else deserves access to that, no matter what they tell you, and then build on it from there. So my hope is that people start those conversations young and they see the benefits pay off. I certainly am, and we've been having them for 4 years, a little over, and it's probably one of my proudest parenting decisions that I've made.
It's kind of, when people start at age 16 and want to have the talk, as a lot of times people, that's like a really long conversation, 16 years worth of all these little 2-minute things here, 3-minute things there, maybe a 20-minute thing at some point or whatever. 16 years worth of conversations in one talk is exhausting.
Yes.
And scary.
And let's be real, it's so awkward.
Yep.
Because you've never had addressed this conversation, and then suddenly now we need to talk because reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think there's several concerns that parents may have, like for example, oh, what does that mean that I told them where babies come from? No, necessarily. I mean, if they ask, you can give a very not generic, but a very general idea. Nothing that involves the bees or the bird or whatever like that. But you can give an overall. It doesn't have to be something too comprehensive because they probably won't understand completely. But that doesn't mean that they don't have the question.
Mm-hmm.
Again, clarifying before answering is always a good idea, because maybe they are referring to the hospital,
Yes,
because
Yeah.
in their minds, babies come from there. That's where babies come from.
absolutely.
So always clarifying before answering. But we start naming the body parts. We start naming, teaching about boundaries, about consent. And remember that consent is not, it doesn't have to be sexual neither. But that's how we build the foundations for a trustworthy relationship,
Hmm.
in a not so awkward conversation when they are 16, 17.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And you know what? Also, I have found myself in situations where I don't exactly, my son he's smart as a whip and like very intuitive. So I've sometimes tried to give him more generic, like not getting into the nitty gritty things. And he is not satisfied with that. So I put a pause on it. I'm like, you know what? I think that this is a conversation worth having, but I'd like to get back to it in a little bit. And then I'll go and do some research and like, what are some good ways that I can tackle this topic? One, that I as a parent feel comfortable with, but two, that I'm talking to him in a factual way, and also age appropriate. So like I've certainly been blindsided, but you don't have to, it's okay not to know how to answer it right away. And kids are very like forgiving and understandable. And as long as you're like, hey, we will talk about that. Let's wait till after dinner, or, let's wait till tomorrow after we have breakfast. And I would say probably 9 times out of 10, that satisfies their need to know. And then you can kind of collect your thoughts a little bit more. And then, in my experience, I let him know. And then he's like, oh, okay. And he goes about his day, and it just, that's it. So
Yeah.
I think that's really a good way to tackle it if you're unsure about what's being asked.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that tip, because that is a really good tip. People sometimes are like caught off guard, and they're kind of like, and then they think they have to answer right away. And something as simple as, that is a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of sometimes people will say, that's a really good question. What do you know about that? Or what have you heard about that? When kids maybe are a little bit older or whatever. And then, but that can we talk about it? And then plan the time and be sure to get back to them with some more information at that time. That is, like you say, age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, and all those good things. That's the trick.
Yes.
And also just checking, what made you think about that? What made you ask that question? You're not in any trouble, but you're gaining time, but also you're gaining information just in case, because maybe another kid said something, or another adult said something that maybe you are not completely sure that in the context. So that gives you more knowledge about what is happening when you're not around,
Mm-hmm.
what the kids are watching in TV, because that's another, media literacy.
Yep.
That's another whole topic. But it's just, you know again, it's just a give and take, uh, kind of knowledge between you and the youth in your lives.
Yeah. And it's okay to say that you don't know something.
Yeah.
It's good for kids to know that, we can learn this together, maybe even at certain points. Yeah.
And I think sometimes not knowing and saying that you don't know is more powerful than trying to fake it till you make it. Because like
Mm-hmm.
that also outside of anything with, teen sexual health, that is modeling that it's okay to not know the answers to things, and that doesn't make you less than or inadequate or anything. It's okay to go
Yeah.
back, do your diligence, and then come back to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Heather, is there anything we haven't asked that you want people to know about the work of PTM, that, your perception?
You know what? I don't think so. I'm just maybe kind of a parting note is I think Nadine and Johnathan, you both are such a great community presence, and you're easy to talk to. You're
Oh,
askable adults.
thank you.
So I look forward to kind of brainstorming ways that we can try to revisit some of the challenges that BTM has faced before, and then think about ways that like how can we be more accessible to youth? how can we address a lot of the barriers that a lot of our underserved populations are facing, and obviously keep working at reducing teen pregnancy, of course, and empowering teens and really all youth to feel good and comfortable, being knowledgeable about their body and what goes on with their body, and then also asking if they have a question. So that's kind of just my parting thoughts, but I think check back with me in a couple weeks.
I think that's a really good wrap up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heather, for being here with us. Thanks everyone who's watching this, and hopefully we will see each other next week on Tuesday at the same time,
Yes.
5:30 on
Yes.
Askable Adults Live.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye
Thanks for
bye.
having me.
Thanks for being